All right, in today's explainer, we are going to fundamentally reframe your entire relationship with failure. You know, we've all been taught to fear falling short, to avoid mistakes at all costs, and just play it safe. But what if everything you've ever been taught about failure is completely backward? Today, we're taking a really deep dive into a profoundly impactful message delivered by Danzel Washinton. We are going to unpack his whole philosophy on risk, setbacks, and why embracing the absolute certainty of failure is literally the only true prerequisite for success. So, get ready to shift your perspective. Okay, let's dive into this. Denzel highlights this Nelson Mandela quote right out of the gate. There is no passion to be found playing small and settling for a life that's less than the one you're capable of living. And this is our hook today, because it establishes the baseline for everything that follows. I mean, we so often think playing it safe is the smart move, right? But settling for a life that's less than you're capable of living inherently strips you of your passion. Achieving anything worthwhile absolutely requires taking risks. It requires stepping out of that tiny, comfortable little box we build for ourselves. And this brilliantly illustrates the core conflict we face when we set out to achieve our goals. On one hand, we're constantly told by our parents, our teachers, society in general, to have something to fall back on. Make sure you have a safe backup plan just in case your dreams don't pan out. But Denzel, he completely rejects this concept. He asks, why would you want to fall back on anything? If you're gonna fall, you should want to fall forward. Why? Because if you fall forward, at least you can see what you're going to hit. It's basically the difference between living defensively in fear and living offensively with a growth-oriented mindset. So let's formally define what we're actually talking about here. Falling forward isn't just some catchy phrase. It's a super active, dynamic process. It is the act of taking risks, learning from inevitable failures, and using those failures to move one step closer to your ultimate success. It means you don't retreat when you stumble. You don't just throw your hands up and quit. You use the momentum of that fall to propel yourself closer to your goal. Because look, if you're gonna hit the ground anyway, you might as well be leaning toward the finish line, right? To truly wrap our heads around this, consider the classic 9-dot IQ test. You've probably seen this. You have a grade of 9 dots, and your task is to draw 5 straight lines through all of them without ever lifting your pencil. Now, if you restrict yourself to the invisible boundaries created by the dots, it is completely impossible. You're gonna fail every single time. The only way to solve the puzzle, the only way to connect the dots, is to draw your lines completely outside the box. It's a great visual reminder that you cannot be afraid to think outside conventional parameters, and you definitely can't be afraid to dream big, even when it feels super uncomfortable. 2,600. Just let that sink in for a quick second. What do you think this represents? Well, it's not a bank account balance. It's not a distance. This massive figure is actually the number of times the legendary baseball player Reggie Jackson struck out during his career. He struck out 2,600 times. That is literally the most career strikeouts in the entire history of Major League Baseball. But here is the really profound takeaway from that. People don't remember the strikeouts. They only remember the home runs. Reggie Jackson is an absolute baseball legend. He's enshrined in history for his ultimate successes. History completely overshadows the massive, record-breaking volume of failure it took for him to hit those monumental home runs in the first place. He had to fall forward 2,600 times at the plate to become a legend. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how this concept applies beyond just sports. Let's pivot to science. 1,000. This is the exact number of failed experiments conducted by Thomas Edison when he was trying to invent the incandescent light bulb. 1,000 complete failures. I mean, just imagine experiencing that level of repeated disappointment and not giving up. But Edison's 1,001st experiment? That was the light bulb. He illuminated the entire world because he understood that every single one of those 1,000 failed experiments was not a waste of time. Actually, they were necessary eliminations. They were each one step closer to success. He didn't fall back, he fell forward through 1,000 different iterations until he finally found the one that worked. Which brings us to some pretty blunt, non-traditional wisdom from Denzel. Here are the inevitable truths of life, plain and simple. You will fail at some point, you will lose, you will embarrass yourself, and frankly, you will suck at something. There is absolutely no doubt about it. Denzel freely admits this isn't your typical warm and fuzzy graduation message, but it is deeply necessary. You have to embrace this reality because it's completely inevitable. Pretending you can live a life without encountering these truths, well, that's just a delusion that's going to hold you back. To really prove this, let's look at Denzel Washington's own career. Early on, he auditioned for a Broadway musical. He thought it was the perfect role for him. There was just one massive problem. He couldn't sing. He completely bombed the audition and obviously didn't get the job. But he didn't quit. He walked out, prayed, and prepared for the next audition, and then the next. He kept failing, but he stayed in the game. Fast forward decades later, and he's starring in the play Fences on Broadway, and he wins a Tony Award. And the kicker? It was at the Court Theater, the exact same theater where he had failed that singing audition 30 years prior. And his path before acting? Oh man, it was just as chaotic. Let's walk through it. Step 1. He starts at Fordham University as a pre-med student, but utterly fails a course called cardiac morphogenesis, so he pivots. Step 2. He switches to pre-law. Yeah, that doesn't work either. Step 3. He switches to journalism. With zero academic focus, his grades just completely plummet. Step 4. He hits rock bottom. He earns a disastrous 1.8 GPA, and the university basically politely asks him to take some time off. He was 20 years old at his absolute lowest point. As you can see, the path to success is almost never a straight line. But then, a truly pivotal moment happens. It's March 27, 1975. He's 20 years old, a college dropout with that 1.8 GPA, just helping out in his mother's beauty shop. An older woman, a town elder, keeps staring at him through the mirror. Finally, she speaks. She gives him this spiritual prophecy. You are going to travel the world and speak to millions of people. At his absolute lowest point, when he felt like a total failure, someone saw his future impact. And years later, he fulfilled that exact prophecy, speaking to millions across the globe through the characters he plays in his movies. Now, that prophecy wouldn't have come true if he had let his 1.8 GPA define him. The core truth here is, if you don't fail, you're not even trying. Just let that sink in. A lack of failure doesn't mean you're perfect. It means you are completely stagnant. Because to get something you never had, you have to do something you never did. Unprecedented success absolutely undeniably demands unprecedented personal risk. And here is where the stakes of this explainer become intensely, almost uncomfortably personal. Imagine you're on your deathbed. Standing around your bed are ghosts. But they aren't literal spirits. They represent your unfulfilled potential. They're the ghosts of the brilliant ideas you never acted on. The ghosts of the unique talents you possessed but were just too afraid to use. And they're looking at you. They're angry, they're disappointed, and they say to you, we came to you because you could have brought us to life, and now we have to go to the grave together. So, I want you to truly, deeply ask yourself, how many ghosts are going to be around your bed when your time comes? Are you playing it so safe right now that you're actively building an army of unfulfilled potential that will just haunt you at the end? You know, you cannot afford to let those ghosts gather, because the world needs your help. Denzel points out that from terrible poverty in places like South Africa to struggles in the Middle East, all the way to our own backyards in Alabama, Tennessee, Louisiana, and Philadelphia, the world needs a lot of help, and it desperately needs that help from you. The world literally cannot afford for you to play small and hide your talents just out of a fear of failing. So the crucial point is that everybody has something vital to contribute. It really doesn't matter if you're a business major, a theologian, a nurse, or a sociologist. It isn't just about how much money you have. Maybe your offering is simply your time. Maybe your gift is an abundance of patience, profound kindness, a capacity for deep love, or even the grit of long suffering. Whatever your unique gift is, it's a tool required to fix a very broken world. Let's move to and see how this builds into our ultimate conclusion here. It really comes down to 4 imperatives. Never be discouraged, never hold back, give everything you got, and when you inevitably fall throughout your life, because as we've already established, you absolutely will, remember to fall forward. Let your failures be your momentum. Use them to see what you are going to hit, and use them to step closer to your ultimate success. Which leaves us with one final, lingering question for you to take away from this explainer today. What are you going to do with what you have? You have the talents, you have the potential, and now you have the understanding that failure is just a stepping stone. So what is your next move? Go out there, take the risk, and whatever happens, fall forward.